What a finish, y'all. What a crazy, crazy finish. Kevin Harvick finally gets his first win. Stewart-Haas Racing finally wins a race for the first time this season. And Jimmie Johnson finds himself outside the top 16 in points. We've got a lot to talk about after Loudon. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove, on the road, in my car, in the parking lot once again. We gotta talk about that New Hampshire race, the one that I'm sure most all of you just got done watching. We're gonna talk about the top finishers, we'll talk about the winner, we'll talk about that. Once again, another crazy finish, another memorable finish, final few laps there. We'll talk about all that. We're gonna talk about a lot of the playoff championship implications in this race. Pretty much, earlier this week, I did a video where I talked about a lot of the bubble drivers on the playoff grid, and pretty much all of those guys had some sort of issue today. So we're gonna talk about that, because the playoffs have been completely flipped upside down. And of course, I'll put this race on my groovy gauge. We'll rate it, we'll talk about that finish again, and let's have fun. It's gonna be a fun show. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the top 20 finishers in this race. I think that's a good place to start. We'll start with Kevin Harvick, the winner, first win of the season. It was a pretty wild finish between him and Denny Hamlin. They were slamming each other, door-to-door contact on the final set of corners. Kevin Harvick won this race basically because he didn't trust his pit crew. I've joked about it, we've all joked about it. It's kind of just a running joke now that Kevin Harvick's pit crew has cost him a lot of wins during his time with Stewart-Haas Racing. And so today, he just didn't give his pit crew the chance to ruin this race. He stayed out on that final caution with about 30 to go. Denny Hamlin took 2 tires, pretty much everybody else. I think Eric Jones is the only other driver who stayed out. He ended up finishing 3rd in this race, as you can see. So Harvick staying out ended up being the difference maker in this race. He was able to hold off Hamlin despite that hard charge, especially as they kind of got into lap traffic there the final couple laps. Thought Hamlin might have a shot at him. He did. He gave Harvick a shot going into the turn 1 on the white flag, but Harvick kept his foot in it, kept the pedal to the metal, and in 3 and 4 when Hamlin tried to roll outside of him, Harvick just wasn't having any of that. Not a dirty move. I think, Hamlin gave him a little bump going into turn 1. Harvick gave him a little slam in turn 4. Fair game, in my opinion. It was just great racing. I don't think either driver seemed to have any ill feelings towards the other. It was just hard racing. It was just another great finish. A quintessential NASCAR finish like that. Talking about what this means, though, for Kevin Harvick, obviously it locks him into the playoffs, but he had like a 200-point cushion already. He was locked in, virtually. But this is really important because it gives him 5 bonus points towards the playoffs, which is huge because, Kevin Harvick, while he hasn't been quite where Kyle Busch or Truex or Keselowski have been this year, he's been really close. But because Harvick didn't have any wins and those guys had bunches of wins, Harvick was kind of lagging behind on the playoff point side of things. I think it's nice to see him get some points here because I think Harvick could really give Truex and Kyle Busch and others a great battle going all the way down to Homestead. So I'm glad that he got some points here. This is Stewart-Haas Racing's first win of the season. I can't believe it. Last year, they were the best team in NASCAR. Harvick won 8 times. I know a couple were encumbered, but he won a whole bunch. Boyer had a couple wins last year. Almirola had a win. Kurt Busch had a win for them last year. All 4 Stewart-Haas Racing drivers found victory lane a year ago. This year, we're more than halfway into the season, and it took till now for Harvick to finally cross the finish line first. 2nd year in a row, he wins at New Hampshire and wins the Lobster. Finishing 2nd, though, I talked about him, Denny Hamlin, one of those Joe Gibbs Racing drivers. Hamlin came this close to winning his 3rd race of the season, but another strong performance for Hamlin. He's always been good at, the kind of shorter racetracks. Hamlin's a great short track racer, and he just put together a very solid finish. The Gibbs cars led the vast majority of this race. Kyle Busch dominated stage 1 and actually led for most of stage 2. He didn't win stage 2, but he led for a while in stage 2, and then Denny Hamlin kind of took over in stage 3 and just didn't quite have enough time to get by the leader, and the different pit strategies, that's what ended up costing him. Now I'm going to talk about a lot of these playoff bubble drivers here in a minute, but let's start with Eric Jones there in 3rd. 2nd straight week with a 3rd place finish. He didn't have a perfect day either. He was speeding on pit road early in this race, made some contact with Alex Bowman on pit road, had some damage from that. Despite all of these setbacks, Eric Jones was one of the few playoff bubble drivers today to actually have a great finish. He was 2nd in stage 1, a lot of important stage points there, and then he finishes 3rd in the final race. Eric Jones came into this race right there, 16th on the grid, 2 points to the good. We'll look at the standings in a minute, but now he has shot up a couple positions and he has a pretty comfortable cushion, all because of just one fantastic race for that 20 team. A lot of Eric Jones critics have kind of come out of the woodworks over the last couple months, but I've been saying since the very beginning that if not for a lot of, kind of self-inflicted wounds by his pit crew, by mechanical issues like Charlotte when he finished dead last, that was a Joe Gibbs Racing issue that caused him to cut a tire down. Eric Jones, more often than not, has done his job this year. So a lot of Eric Jones naysayers have shown up in recent months, and I think the last 2 weeks are showing you guys why, Eric Jones has not been the problem. Ryan Blaney, a strong 4th place finish for him, still winless. He's the one Penske driver without a win this year, but a solid 4th place run for him. 5th place, Matt DiBenedetto. How about that? Where did he come from? He ran around 10th for a lot of this race, and then with the pit strategy, He got a great restart there on that final one after taking 2 tires. That's what helped get him up into that top 5. But what a day for Matt DiBenedetto, you know? He's still like 24th in points, so he's had a pretty bad year. But he's had a few just bright moments like this, like Daytona earlier this year when he led laps, or here a top 5. He's had a few of these moments where you're like, hey, I think Matt DiBenedetto actually can do something. But he just hasn't had enough of them. I think it's the car still is not good. I know that's, you know, a JGR affiliate team, but it's not the same as Furniture Row Racing. So I know the car's still not great. But you know, this is still, I'm not gonna take away from this. This is a great run for Matt DiBenedetto. He's a guy who may or may not return to that team next year. So this is gonna give, you know, Levine, Joe Gibbs, gonna give him something to think about. Martin Truex Jr., solid day for Joe Gibbs Racing, 6th. Ryan Newman finishes 7th. Here's another playoff bubble driver who had some issues. You know, he almost lost his entire engine in this race. He went down a cylinder, but they managed to come to pit road and actually fix it, which they mentioned during the NBC broadcast. It's rare that you have an engine issue during a race and are able to actually fix it and stay competitive. He did just that. Ran top 10 for a lot of this race, finished 7th despite those setbacks. And Ryan Newman's a guy, I mentioned Jones was 2 points to the good coming into this race. Newman was actually 2 points to the bad coming into this race. But we'll see in a minute. Newman finds himself in a pretty nice spot after that comeback. Kyle Busch dominated the first half of this race, then spun out in stage 3, got some damage, and then just really never quite bounced back. 8th place for him, not bad. And then you got the other Penske guys. A few other notable finishes here because I want to spend some time talking about the playoff drivers. Alex Bowman driving his 3rd different car of the weekend. It was actually one of Jimmy Johnson's backup cars he was driving today. Managed to come home 14th. You know, he had those issues in practice, had a broken drive shaft, I believe, and then he wrecked, cost him his first 2 cars, his primary and his backup. They had to re-sticker, they had to peel all the 48 stickers off of the backup car and put 88 stickers on it overnight, but he was able to come out and still, you know, despite all that, finish 14th, not too bad. Chris Buescher, another solid day. He's impressed me this year. And then some bad notables. RCR guys, Austin Dillon was 32nd, had a mechanical issue early on. Hemrick was involved in a wreck. Well, not his fault. Daniel Suarez got stuck in some oil from Chase Elliott's car, spun out into Hemrick, but Hemrick finished last, so a tough break for him. Ricky Stenhouse, 37th, wrecked after cutting a tire. He made some contact with Eric Jones. Afterwards, he was not too pleased with Eric Jones. Seemed to indicate that payback would be coming at some point, but now Ricky Stenhouse finds himself in a must-win situation when it comes to making the playoffs. Jimmy Johnson lost power steering, had some other mechanical issues, 30th. Chase Elliott had an engine problem, similar maybe to Johnson's, 29th, so really bad weekend for Hendrick Motorsports. Lost a lot of race cars in practice and then kind of had some mechanical issues during the race. So a bad weekend for Hendrick. Larson wrecked twice, 32nd. Okay, a lot of bad finishes here. Let's look at the playoff grid now. I want to talk about the points because this is where things get extremely interesting. So here we go. Here are the point standings right now. Everyone obviously who's won is locked in. I'd say Almirola and Blaney are probably in a pretty safe spot, but then you see towards the back, Kyle Larson finishing 32nd today is now only 31 points to the good despite a lot of these other guys' issues. Eric Jones came into this race only 2 points above the cut line. He leaves 28 points above the cut line. Those 9 stage points he got were very important to this, of course, and then he had a great finish and other people struggled, but a huge points day for Eric Jones, and throw Ryan Newman into the mix there as well. He came into this race actually outside the top 16. He is now 21 whole points to the good. What a break for Ryan Newman. He ran great and had a top 10 at Kentucky last week, and then of course another top 10. He backs that up with a top 10 at New Hampshire. Ryan Newman, man, Ryan Newman deserves a ton of credit. We've given Kurt Busch a ton of credit for how he's turned that 1 car around this year. Ryan Newman, that 6 car was not good last year. It looked a little better towards the end of the season with Matt Kenseth driving it, had a couple top 10s, but I did not expect this. I didn't expect Ryan Newman to be 15th in points halfway through the season, ahead of Jimmy Johnson, ahead of Daniel Suarez. I did not expect that. Ahead of Clint Bowyer. Did you see that? Clint Bowyer's 16th on the grid. Honestly, Clint Bowyer's lucky to be 16th after some of the issues he had today. He wrecked himself battling with Truex early on in this race, but didn't have too bad of damage. He was able to mostly continue, just not quite at full speed. But Clint Bowyer now finds himself behind Ryan Newman. That's just crazy. And then it gets even crazier. Jimmy Johnson came into this race tied for 14th in the points. He leaves 17th. And no special number here, also 17 points behind. That's a notable deficit. He's not going to make that up, you know, in one race necessarily. Suarez also 17 points back. Bad luck for him. He was caught up when Chase Elliott blew an engine and laid oil down. Looked like Suarez got stuck in it and spun out and did some damage. So a bad break for Daniel Suarez there. But for Jimmy Johnson, the mechanical issues, that whole program just is not up to Hendrick standards. At the beginning of this year, I said Jimmy Johnson would miss the playoffs. A lot of people made fun of me, said, oh no, Jimmy's gonna bounce back. He'll be fine, new sponsor, they'll be good. They got the Camaro figured out, they'll be fine. But no, with that rookie crew chief and the fact that, you know, it just felt like Hendrick Motorsports really wasn't giving Jimmy Johnson priority, I said in February that Jimmy would miss the playoffs. And right now he is 17th, 17 points out. I know we still have a few races to go, some good tracks for Jimmy Johnson, but man, there's only so much Jimmy Johnson himself can do. Like today was a mechanical issue that really wasn't Jimmy's, had anything to do do with Jimmy Johnson. If nothing else, at least Hendrick Motorsports can be happy with the fact that Johnson was running, you know, around the top 10 when he had that issue, so he was looking like he was gonna have an okay day before things went south. But Jimmy Johnson, man, it's just, he is the only driver since the chase, the playoffs was invented, he is the only driver to have made the chase every single year. That streak is definitely in jeopardy right now. So let's get this straight. Let's look at it one more time. Ryan Newman jumped from 17th up to 15th. That's huge. Eric Jones from 16th to 14th. That's huge. Clint Boyer bumped down to the cut line a little bit. Jimmy Johnson fell below the cut line. That's also huge. And then you see a little lower there, Ricky Stenhouse, 77 points out. That's what I'm saying. If he'd had a good run today, he might have still been in a position where he could point his way in. But after the DNF today, yeah, he's gonna need a win, I think, to make those points up. Crazy day, crazy finish. So there you have it. That's the points standings as they run currently. We still have, what is it, I think 6 races to go until the playoffs start. So still quite a bit of racing, but man, it's amazing how quick things could have changed just like that. Let's talk about the racing itself and put this thing on the groovy gauge. Heck yeah, right in my passenger seat, riding shotgun. I like it. New Hampshire, I did a video a couple weeks ago where I ranked all my favorite NASCAR tracks based on the actual racing product, and I had New Hampshire pretty low. New Hampshire lost a date just a couple years back before 2018. We went to New Hampshire twice a year. Starting last year, we only were going once, and now this year only one trip. And I was okay with that decision. I think they replaced it with another Las Vegas race, which I didn't love that decision as much, but New Hampshire for years has never been, you know, a great track. But today, I'll say this was kind of like with Kentucky last week being the first real memorable Kentucky race I could remember. This kind of was one of the first real memorable Loudon races I can think of in recent memory. They call this place the Magic Mile, but there really wasn't that much magical about the racing here for years. And today, you know, it's still typical Loudon, hard to pass. I think adding the grip strip in the third and first lane, the PJ1, definitely helped a little bit, but still hard to pass. Fuel strategy came into play, that was interesting. I think today's race was most memorable and most entertaining because of the drivers that found themselves with problems. The fact that pretty much anytime there's a caution or a crazy restart or an issue on pit road, the fact that it always involved a driver who has high stakes. You know, Jimmy Johnson having a mechanical issue is huge in the grand scheme of things. Eric Jones running well is huge in the grand scheme of things. I think that's what really contributed to this being an entertaining race, in my opinion. I think that really helped. Obviously, the finish was great as well. Finished with like a 30-lap green flag run, so it could have gotten stale, could have kind of gotten kind of boring. But with Hamlin kind of trying to run down Harvick, wasn't making up much time, and then on the final couple laps with lap traffic a little bit, got to him, contact on the final lap. That's great. You got both drivers got a shot at each other. That's what racing's all about. So it was a great finish, kind of like Kentucky last week, where it was a decent race until the great finish. I kind of got to do a similar thing here with New Hampshire. I do think the racing from, you know, lap 1 to lap 280 was maybe a little bit better than what we saw at Kentucky. Finish was equally exciting, so I'm gonna have to give this race about the same grade I gave Kentucky last week. I'm gonna give this one, I'll bump it up slightly. I'm gonna give it a 70%. Last week I gave Kentucky a 65, I believe. I'll give this one a 70%. It was fun, and I liked having the 750 horsepower back. You know, the short tracks with all the 750 horsepower still, you could really see it. Drivers sliding the cars on exit. That's still very fun, and it was a nice change of pace because Kentucky was kind of what we've seen in a lot of mile-and-a-halfs this year. Still good racing, still fun, but you know, this New Hampshire race, when you can have horsepower, when you can have the cars entirely in the driver's hands and not super dependent on aero, and get a good race, that's the best of every world right there. If we'd had more of these types of races the last several years with high horsepower, maybe we wouldn't see the package we see on intermediates now, but unfortunately we've had so many mediocre or bad races with high horsepower on intermediate tracks, we have that new aero package. So, but this race in New Hampshire kind of was reminiscent of the good old days of higher horsepower and just putting it all in the driver's hands and letting them settle things completely for themselves. But yeah, 70%, I think that's a fair score. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. How would you rate this race? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Let me know all that good stuff. Thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate the support. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. Thank you for watching. Big thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison, at you as the stars, mentally defective, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Luscious, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMicino, Jeremy Conkling, and the rest of these incredible Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this without the support I get from you guys every single week, every single month, so I really appreciate it. I swear, I'll be out of my car and back in a set studio pretty soon. If you missed it, I uploaded some fun, wacky videos earlier this last week. I drove around town looking for as many NASCAR sponsors as I possibly could. Had some fun with it, so check that out if you missed it. I got some other videos planned for this week, and I'll see you guys then. Hope you enjoyed this race. Hope you had a good weekend, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye, everyone.